I'm about to build a 4-card GPU mining rig in 2024, but really it's meant for mining in 2025. Bitcoin prices have already gone crazy and altcoin prices should be following close behind. So let's go ahead and start building this mining rig. I'm gonna show you exactly how to do it and exactly what parts you need to build a GPU mining rig in 2025. So let's get into it. If you guys are new to the channel, I'm Modern Mining, and I specialize in home crypto mining. So as you can see, I've already got 36 GPUs running on my shelf right here. Now I'm gonna be building a 4-card rig for a client actually. I do build mining rigs for clients. If you're interested, I'll put my email up on the screen. But today we have 4 3060 Ti GPUs that we're gonna be building this rig with. 3 of them are gigabyte cards and 1 of them is an MSI card. 3060 Ti's are basically the perfect balance between budget, hash rate, and efficiency. They're basically great cards for building entry-level GPU rigs. The rest of our parts here, we have a motherboard, which is a TB250 Bitcoin board. You can find this on eBay. We have 4 GPU risers, brand new in the package. These you can find on Amazon. I'll have links to all of these items. We'll need power cords for our 2 power supplies here. So this is something I'm doing a little bit differently in today's video, is that I'm using a ZSX board, which actually is able to use a 24-pin connector to power the motherboard, as well as a Molex, and it also will power the CPU. So this will be the main workhorse of the power supply. This is a 750 watt platinum. So this can be plugged into a standard 120 volt outlet. This customer does not have 240 volts, so that's why we're running 750 watt power supplies. And I have another one over here. These 2 PSUs will be chained together with this little chain cord right here. So this allows you to hit the power button on one and it will turn on both, and same with turning them off. You can see right here we have our 12 GPU frame. This is gonna work perfect for 4 GPUs though. And then we have an SSD drive for HIVEOS. We have a fan controller that's going to power our 5 120mm fans that we'll need to mount to the front of the case there. And then our power supply cables that go to the ZSX board. We'll get to that later. So here are the parts. Let's get into the build. Alright guys, I've built a lot of GPU mining rigs this year, and I try to make videos on every single one, and with that I try to make each one a bit of a different experience. So today is going to be more of a voiceover style, kind of walk you through the build as we go through it. Right here we're just putting some standoffs onto the frame. This is going to basically hold the motherboard above the frame. Make sure you're not going to short out the motherboard against that metal frame. So when I'm building custom rigs, sometimes I'll use a wooden frame, but these metal frames off Amazon, they're like 30 something bucks and 5 minutes to put together. It's really hard to beat. So I have begun using these frames a lot, and I do like them. So this build, 4-card rig, 4 3060 Ti's. Most of the rigs I build for people, I'm using 3060 Ti's for what I mentioned earlier. Super budget cards, great efficiency, and they just mine very well. So I think that's always a great card to start with. Right here, we're plugging in these sort of special ZSX PSU cables. These are going to go into the motherboard. Instead of using an ATX PSU, we're going to be using these cables. It's going to come with a 24-pin and a CPU connector, and then the only other thing that's going to come off of that power supply is going to be a Molex cable we're plugging in here that we'll use to power our SATA drive that has our operating system on it. So I was a little nervous to use these boards. I've tried using like Pico PSUs in the past and really not had a lot of luck with them. But this board actually turned out okay, so I'm going to try a couple more like this, but so far these things seem to work pretty well. This is that little chaining cable that's going to allow both power supplies to turn on at the same time. Super convenient. Plug up our SSD drive here and then get that plugged into the motherboard.
And then we're going to plug the other side into the SSD, and we'll discuss the HIVEOS flashing portion of this a little later. But for now, let's check in on this.
All right, guys, let's do a quick check-in here. So we just installed our SSD. As you saw, we've got our SATA data cable going into the motherboard, and then we have our power cable going into the ZXX PSU. And then we have our power supplies linked together, so when we turn on one, it will turn on the other. And we also have our motherboard all hooked up besides the GPUs. So we plugged our 24 pin in and our CPU power from our ZSX PSU here. These motherboards already come with RAM installed and the CPU cooler. So all you need to do is plug them up and then plug in your GPUs. So let's go ahead and start moving on to the GPUs.
Over the year, I've had a lot of people ask how much profit do I make on these rig builds, and I really try to keep it to a minimum for a couple reasons. One is that I really just can't make too much profit off these, or people aren't going to buy them. GPU mining has incredibly tight margins, so you really can't be overspending for your hardware, or it's going to be hard to make your money back. But also, I don't charge a ton for these because it's just great content for the YouTube channel. I know when I first started the YouTube, I was really wondering how was I going to continue pumping out content where if I want to build a rig build for you guys or a CPU build, I'm going to have to spend $1,000 on hardware just to make one video, and that really isn't sustainable with where I'm at right now. So this kind of venture into building rigs on the side has really allowed me to create a ton of mining rig videos, and a lot of those videos are my best performing videos on the channel. So I like to think that that kind of adds to the profit that I get on these builds, even though the fee for the build itself may not be that much. It's also made me connect with a lot of my viewers who are purchasing these, and I get them into the Discord, and it's always a great time. So let's finish plugging these in here, and we'll do another quick checkup on this rig. It's getting close to GPU time.
All right, guys, as you can see, we have all of our risers hooked up with power. We've got 4 cables in this power supply, 4 cables in this power supply. The remaining 2, these will power 2 GPUs right here and right here. And these 2 will power this GPU and this GPU. So all that's left is to plug in the GPUs here, plug in our power cords, and then we'll see if this bad boy boots up or not.
One thing I wanted to mention about these metal frames that we're using is if you notice that metal support bar has like a foam pad on it. And it might not seem like a big feature, but that can save you a ton of headaches. So on 2 different occasions, I've had troubleshooting issues with metal rigs where I'm switching cables, switching GPUs, and not really able to figure out what's going on. And in both of those cases, it had turned out that the solder leads on the bottom of those risers had poked through the foam pad that's on the bottom of the riser and was making contact with the metal support bar underneath. And that's going to cause shorting and all kinds of just weird issues that are very hard to troubleshoot here. So the risers have a foam pad on the bottom, but adding another foam pad to that middle support bar is a great idea, and one of the reasons I do love these frames, because it basically totally eliminates the risk of your riser shorting out to the frame and is going to save you a lot of headaches here. So this build here is using 3 gigabyte cards and then 1 MSI card, and I don't want to spoil it, but those are not the final cards that end up in this rig. Something is going to happen a little later on in this video that I need to end up swapping a card out, so stay tuned for that. I also want to mention, if you're still watching and enjoying this build, consider subscribing if you've not subscribed. These videos take a long time, and any support you guys can give, a like on the video, is very helpful. So once you get these attached to the frame, it really is as easy as just plugging in those power cables that we already plugged into the PSUs. Sometimes it's a real pain to get these plugged in, especially if you have 2 ports side by side, but just keep messing with it and eventually you will get them in. So this is getting close to being wrapped up here. Really, it's not too difficult to build one of these once you kind of have the process down.
And just like that, we've got a mining rig that is ready to plug in and run. I had to plug in a couple extra cables here because I didn't realize these cards took 2 slots. But let's do some cable managing real quick. Or actually first, let's make sure it all works before we start to cable manage so that we don't have to undo everything if we need to fix something. Now at this point, the rig should be finished, but you really never know if it's gonna work or not on the first run. And one thing that we obviously still need to do is to plug in our riser cards into the motherboard. So we'll do that with all 4. We'll use these 4 slots. Sometimes it acts up if you put it in the big one, and we'll test it out. It's looking pretty good.
While we finish up this build, guys, let me know down below, are you guys building mining rigs right now? Or do you think it's a good idea to build mining rigs right now? Crypto price has been going kind of crazy, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, let's go ahead and move this mining rig over to this table here. And this is where we're now going to need to plug in our power supplies into the wall. So we've got 2 120 volt cables here. These will plug into a standard home outlet. This mining rig shouldn't ever pull more than probably 800 watts with these 4 cards. So you should be totally fine on a single outlet. With these will go one right here. And then this other one will go into this one. Now the reason I run 120 volt PSUs is because it just makes it easier on the customer. They don't have to set up anything at all. All they need to run one of these mining rigs is an outlet and a hardwire internet connection. So now I need to grab an Ethernet cable, which I've got one tucked somewhere back in here I have to fish out. That's the benefit of doing this right next to my big mining rig frame over here, is that I've always got an Ethernet cable when I need one. So we'll plug that in. So we've got the mining rig all hooked up, but we haven't set up our operating system, and that's what we need to do with our SSD drive. We need to flash HIVEOS and then put the customer's information on it so that when he plugs it in, it's gonna immediately be mining to his account, no effort required. Now, I'm not gonna do that in this video. I've already filmed a full 30-minute GPU mining software guide that covers how to set up HIVEOS, where to mine your coins to, what wallet, how to sell your coins, how to cash out. If you need to know any of that information, I'll leave that video up here. But most importantly, it shows how to cover HIVEOS setup, so we're not gonna do that in this video. Let's turn this thing on and see if it's working. All right, we've got everything plugged up now. I did add a little power switch over here so that we can hit the power button on this rig. We'll eventually get into the BIOS and make sure that whenever we turn on the power supplies that this will boot up. The setting is called AC power loss restore, and we want to set that to on. But let's go ahead and flip this on. You can see that our power supply is turned on. And we can see that our motherboard is spinning, so we didn't need to push that power button this time around. Now, normally this means if you see the Ethernet light, I think this means that it posted, but let's see if this pops up in HIVEOS. So I actually put on my own SSD that's attached to my HIVEOS account so I can troubleshoot this and make sure everything's working before putting on the customer's information. Well guys, I've got good news. Let's check out the little wall PC here. And you can see our test rig. This is our rig. We do indeed have 4 GPUs showing up here, and they are already mining Zealous. This was just the flight sheet that was set on the last time I turned that SSD on. But you can see all 4 3060 Ti's here hashing away. So that is great news. That means this mining rig literally worked right away. No tinkering or anything. That's pretty rare, honestly. Normally you're gonna have to mess around with some stuff, but this one worked perfectly. Now, this is the first time I've ever built a mining rig with this little ZSX board. I can never say that right, which means that this server power supply is actually powering the motherboard itself, and it appears to be working fine. So the benefit of this is that you don't have to have 3 PSUs, 2 server PSUs and an ATX PSU to power the motherboard. Just these 2 do. So mining rig's built. Need to do a couple more things. So let's proceed with putting the fans on, getting the fans wired to our little fan controller right here. With this blue knob, we can adjust the speed of the fans. So if the customer wants them quiet or loud, he can do that. With 4 cards, they're not really necessary, but I am building this rig so that it'll fit 8 cards. So the customer paid for basically a 4-card rig with the capability to run 8 cards. And what that means is that he can plug 4 more in with no other components besides the GPUs itself. I'm providing enough risers, power cables, everything. So let's knock out the rest of these little changes, put the fans on, get them wired up, do some cable management, and then I will talk about how profitable is this? Is this even worth building? And also keep in mind that these profits probably will rise in 2025. So let's finish this bad boy off.
So let's talk about mistakes I made on this build. They almost all have to do with these fans that I'm installing now. First, an obvious mistake here is these should be installed before the GPUs because you need to install them from the back, and so the cards are going to get in the way. So if you notice, I've actually taken off one of those GPUs there, and throughout this process I end up having to take off all 4, put the fans on, and then put the rest of the GPUs back on. Another thing is that these frames actually use 6 120mm fans. I thought it was 5. So I bought a 5-pack of black fans and was 1 fan short, but luckily I had an extra black fan that basically looked the exact same, so I was able to complete the build like that. Otherwise, in this short time crunch, I would have had to give this to the customer with 1 missing fan, which wouldn't have been fun. Another thing is screws for these fans. For whatever reason, this 5-pack of fans didn't come with your typical case fan screws that you would use to plug into like your PC case or to screw into your PC case. So I had to dig through my drawers, and I was able to find exactly 12 mix and match screws that worked. But I learned my lesson, and I went ahead and picked up a big pack of screws off of Amazon, so I just don't have to deal with that in the future. I love these little PCIe powered fan splitters. Basically, this whole fan splitter is powered by 1 PCIe cord, which, since we're using server power supplies, we have no shortage of PCIe connectors. And this one adapter is going to power all 6 fans on the rig. And that blue knob allows you to adjust the speed, which is nice. They also come with a little sticky pad on the bottom, so you can stick them down to the frame where they're just going to stay, and you're not going to have to worry about that thing flipping around. Though I do normally just cover the entire bottom in duct tape, wrap it around the sides as well, and then toss it into the rig just to be sure that nothing's going to short. So let's turn this bad boy on. Looks like the fans are working. It's a good sign. Now let's crunch some numbers and get into the profitability side of this.
All right, guys, it's early the next morning. As you saw, we got this rig finished up yesterday. All the fans are installed. So basically, this is ready to hand off to the customer. But before we do that, because he is coming today, I want to get a full power reading of this rig so we can do a profitability calculation so you guys can determine if you want to build one of these or not. So what I'm going to do is plug that power strip into this little power strip here, and then I've got a little watt meter that's going to tell us the exact amount of watts this rig is using, and then we can go on the computer and do some calculations to get the full profitability. So let's do it. Okay, here's the setup. I can't plug that watt meter directly in because of all the other plugs I've got over there, so I just use that mini power strip to get that. So let's flip that on. Rig is going to start. We can see we're drawing 108.5 watts, and I will give this a couple seconds to get all the way to mining, and then we'll see what we're pulling. Should be around 350-ish. All right, just started mining. We are pulling 404, 403, somewhere in that range. So knowing that, how much money is this rig making at the end of November 2024? Let's go find out.
Here is that rig in HIVEOS. We can see the 4 3060 Ti's, 3 of which are Samsung and 1 of which is Hynix. You guys may have noticed that one of the GPUs became a Founders Edition like midway through the video. One of the GPUs actually started artifacting really bad and was not mining properly. So I took it out and put it on Windows, and that's where I determined that it was artifacting and likely a bum card. So swapped that out for one of my 3060 Ti's, and customers coming to pick up today, so everything worked out okay. But let's see, they're all getting around that 26 kilohash mark, which puts our rig at 102.7 kilohash as our total Zealous Hash V2 hash rate. So to determine profitability, my favorite site to use is hashrate.no. This is going to allow you to either choose your GPUs and get estimates or put in exact values of power. We're going to do both and see how the results compare here. So if we choose a 3060 Ti, and we can actually go ahead and set this to 4 GPUs, and we can see that our profit per day on this rig is going to be somewhere between 58 cents and let's say 20 cents, somewhere within that range. And that's pretty low, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of things that are happening in the crypto market right now. Bitcoin has gone on a little bit of a run, and historically altcoins are always following after. So if these altcoins start going on crazy price pumps, mining profits increase by a large amount as well. And the upside of building a rig now is that mining hardware is going to increase if profitability comes back. So who knows what's going to happen, but at least the rig is still profitable right now. And going into winter in the United States, it's a great little space heater. I'm going to be doing a lot of videos on that soon. Now, let's do our exact stats on this rig. So if we put in Zealous Hash here, we've got about 103 kilohash at 403 watts, and we hit calculate here. We can see that on Zealous, we're getting about 12 cents profit per day. So there is potentially better coins that this could go on, but that's also the beauty of a GPU mining rig, because you can mine whatever coin you want. You're not stuck to one coin like an Asic, so a new one may come out next week that's making $1 a day. It's all up in the air and changes all the time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing and liking the video. These take a long time to make, so it would be a huge help. But I'll see you guys next time, and appreciate you. Bye.